All right, it's time to do some deciding. Welcome to the GamesBeat Decides podcast. It's your weekly source for smart discussions about some pretty dumb stuff. I'm your host, Jeffrey Grubb, and with me is GamesBeat boss, Jason Wilson. Jason, go ahead, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone. It's Jason Wilson, the managing editor of GamesBeat and the RPG nerd around here.
Thanks for joining me, Jason. Mike's off this week. We're going to let him, not have to come in and do this with me. Even though I think he should be working.
It would have been funny to have seen him try to do it from a line at Disney World.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Everyone would have loved that.
I almost thought about making him do it.
I know, we really should have. He doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve to go to Disney World. All right, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy 15, No Man's Sky, and some sadder music for slow blockbuster game sales, and then Hearthstone is going to cap it off if we have time. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll get started with all this in a moment. First, I want to let everyone know that you can always get more of us on GamesBeat.com. You can email the podcast if you have questions, corrections, anything like that at GamesPlus, the plus sign, podcast at VentureBeat.com. And finally, if you like what you're listening to, subscribe. We're already on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you catch pods. If you have a service that you like to use and we're not on there, again, use that email address, gamespluspodcast at venturebeat.com. Let me know and I'll get it on there.
And leave us a review.
Yeah, and again, if you like what you hear, go on iTunes, 5-star review. That really helps people find us and discover us. We really appreciate that. That's the spiel, Jason. That's all over. I guess, we should probably talk a little bit about what we did this past week. Did you have any good gaming things happen over Thanksgiving?
Well, so Thanksgiving is a very whirlwind of a holiday for me because I have to travel a couple hours up to wine country and a couple hours back down to where I live in the Bay Area. So I don't really get to do much when it comes to playing video games on Thanksgiving around that, and then I have my children. And so what video games came down to it was letting my 6-year-old play Pokemon by himself with the 3DS, just sitting there on the couch with the 4-year-old sitting next to him, and they caught a scatterbug and were very excited because they had seen a scatterbug in the cartoon the day before.
Well, that's that synergy that Nintendo loves.
Oh yes, especially when it's an older series because they're still on XY.
Oh, they are. Okay.
And for myself, I was just been playing more Hearthstone and more Civ 6, but last night I got Final Fantasy 15.
And we can talk about that now a little bit. Do you have some? I guess we can get into that here in a second, but
yeah.
I'm getting echo
So
from you,
first of all,
Jason.
our review went up.
Jason, do you have headphones you could put on? I got a little bit of an echo when I was talking. While you're doing that, let's see. So yeah, our review for Final Fantasy 15 did go up. Mike Minotti worked on that all weekend, so I guess he kind of deserves to go to Disney World a little bit. He posted that. He seems to really like it. We talked about it a little last week, and it's one of the games he kind of hinted that he had it and he couldn't talk about it. He wasn't even supposed to mention that, but we failed at that a little bit. But he seemed to really enjoy what he's been playing. Gave it a 90 out of 100, I think, and said some really good things. He said it has some issues still, the game, but overall, he still really liked what he played of it.
Yeah, so I played about 5 hours yesterday.
Wonderful.
And till about midnight, and I was taken by a few things. First of all, there's a great song that plays right at the beginning of the game that surprised the heck out of me. I don't want to spoil that moment for anybody. Some people have already said it, and I know it's out there, but it was a surprising moment for me, one I really enjoyed. This Final Fantasy 15 is unlike any of the others, which to me, I really like. The one constant in Final Fantasy, as Jason Scher noted in his review at Kotaku, and something I always try to hammer home to people, is that each Final Fantasy is different. And they might have parts that link them. There might be themes that link all the games, but each one is different. And this one is completely different than any of the others that came before it.
And it's like completely different in a way that those Final Fantasy games were always different. So it's not just like different for different sakes. It's like Square Enix really experimenting with their setting and everything, right?
Yeah. And this experiment is huge. We've got a very modern looking world. It's got some sci-fi in it. It's got some of the Old West in it, especially your starting locations. And it's got a very action-heavy take on combat. You can set it up to be more turn-based. I haven't tried that option yet. I haven't talked to anyone who's done that option yet, so I don't know how well it works. I don't see it working very well based on what I've played so far, but who knows? Maybe it will.
Well, I think that we should probably just dive right into that first topic then. I think we were going to do was Final Fantasy 15 worth the wait, but you've only played 5 hours. Mike's not here. He wrote the review. So instead, since you have played 5 hours, I'm wondering, is Final Fantasy 15 making a good first impression? Is it
making an excellent first impression?
That is, I think, something that I think a lot of people are going to be happy to hear. I've only played a little bit of Final Fantasy over time. I almost finished 6. I've tried a bunch of the other ones, never got into them. But I know a lot of people love this franchise, and there's been some concern because this game's taken a long time to make. They announced it first as Final Fantasy 15 or 13 versus like 8-9 years ago.
Versus 13.
Yeah, versus 13. Yeah, God. And it was and that never really manifested until recently. Last couple of years, they're like, okay, we're transitioning that, making it Final Fantasy 15. And I always thought, okay, working on a game for a decade always seems like a recipe for disaster. And Final Fantasy 13 didn't wow a lot of people. A lot of fans seemed pretty upset with that. And yet now you're playing this. Mike seemed to really like it, and you are saying it's making a good first impression. What is it doing specifically that's kind of jumping out at you?
Well, okay, so let's boil it down to 3 things I really like so far. Number 1 is the setting. There's this total real-world feel to it as you're driving around in this really cool car. Big, black, fancy-looking thing that looks like a cross between a Bentley and a Cadillac. It's called the Regalia, and it's a sweet ride. I really like having this car almost be a member of your party.
That's cool.
You're looking around, and you've got a diner. You've got a garage. You've got freaking mobile homes, people sitting there in their trailers. You've got, everything looks like it's something that came out of the world, yet of course it's not, because it's in this more fantastical setting. I like the camaraderie that has come out from the characters so far. Even just 5 hours of running around this part of the hinterlands, so to speak, you're already seeing that they have these 4 guys have this tight bond, Noctis and his crew. One that I really appreciate. Let's face it, the guy and his merry band has been a story that's been overtold. And did Final Fantasy have to tell that story? No. But they did, and they're telling it. And it's good so far because you actually feel the bond between these characters. And it's not like they were just thrown together. And one of the things that I did not like about Final Fantasy 13, and I was a fan of the game, right. I will defend it.
You're one of the ones that liked it quite a bit, right?
Yeah, is that the characters don't feel like they have real bonds at all throughout the game. And you do feel those bonds back in 12. You feel those bonds in 10 and 9 for sure. 8 and 7, 6,
Yeah, it's one of those things I would associate with the series. When I do dive into it, is one of the things I notice is that the characters all do seem to play off each other really well and seem to have real relationships.
Yeah, well, these guys do have relationships. They're more than just the prince's friends and protectors,
Okay.
They're his brothers, for lack of a better word.
And they established that really well in the early going. So you said there was 3 points. What was the third one? Was it, so far we have the car and the friends?
The exploration.
Okay.
I'm enjoying running around the land here. Now, some people might get really tired of running from one place to the other. Some places you could drive and park your car. Yes, you actually have to park it. I really like that little detail. And the car actually parks, goes into the parking space.
Do you have to manually park it? Are you using a steering wheel?
It will park itself, but you have to.
But still, you have to do it. Okay.
At one point, there's parts where Ignis will be driving, one of the guys. But there's one point he lets you drive, and I crashed the car up pretty damn well. I had to get it fixed. Yeah, my oldest said, "Daddy, your car's all scratched up," and then my youngest said, "Daddy, you're a bad driver." Yeah, so my kids are always building my self-esteem. Good job, boys.
Hey, they call it a scatterbug. They're allowed to talk whatever they want.
Yeah, I guess they can talk about all the crap they want.
Yeah.
But I really like going around through this world. There's two things I liked about it. Number one, all these points of interest pop up in your map like other open world games. It felt very much like the Elder Scrolls or The Witcher in that regard. You'll find things that you need. You'll find peppers for cooking. You'll find areas where you can harvest elemental magic to power your magic. The other guys use weapons. You can use weapons or magic as Noctis. They kind of act like grenades. You throw the magic out and boom.
So I'm wondering then, is there anything that is bothering you then? Because it sounds like it's exactly what you want from a Final Fantasy game right now.
Well, I don't know if it's what I want from a Final Fantasy. I'm enjoying what they've given me.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time with the combat. There's some combo based. Stealth's very important. My grades. It grades you on three things: offense, defense, and stealth. And I've been getting A's and A pluses in offense, but I've been getting D's in stealth and in defense. You need to block. You need to parry. You need to step away from attacks. And you need to work as a team. There's team attacks you can use with your friends. And you got to use all those in conjunction. And I'm having a hard time with all the buttons right now. But that's because I always have a hard time when I have to hit all these different buttons. As somebody who doesn't play a lot of combo-heavy games.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is it closer to Bayonetta? Like, is it like on the action game scale? Like, where does it land?
No, it's below The Witcher 3.
Okay. But that seems like, I mean, it's a long game, so it sounds like you have room for improvement. Do you think that this combat system is something that could sustain you throughout the entire game, that you're going to be, by the end, you're like, I've learned, I've gotten better, and I've appreciated that journey itself?
I think so. It depends on what weapon options you get, what spells you get.
Right.
One of the things that I love is magic when I play games, and I always want to be the spellcaster. So if I get more opportunities to use magic instead of using a sword, I'll probably enjoy that more. But that said, I don't let combat get in my way from enjoying a role-playing game. And so far, I'm enjoying the story we're seeing here. And I really enjoy the side quests. There's this one quest line I'm on with the hunters, and they're hunting the big bad monsters that live in the world. And this guy's sad because he failed to find a tag, which are like dog tags for a hunter, and you have to go find them. And he always wants to make sure that the next of kin knows when someone dies, and that was a little affecting.
That's interesting. So you don't think Conan O'Brien's little thing hurt the game? That's something we talked about last week. His bit. Me and Mike decided.
I doubt it.
Me and Mike said it probably didn't hurt it. I mean, if you care about this game, you probably will still care about it. And now it's coming out, and it sounds like people are going to play it and be like, okay, no, this is still a very good game.
What was very interesting is I can't remember the last time Final Fantasy was being advertised in an NFL game, and I saw advertisements for it this weekend watching football.
They're definitely going for that mainstream audience, and we'll move on to No Man's Sky here in a second, that next topic. But I guess I do want to ask you that. Do you think that this could appeal to a mainstream audience? From what you like, if someone were to buy this game and play the first couple hours like you did, do you think like someone like that, likes video games, plays more than just Call of Duty, they might play The Witcher? Do you think they're going to get something out of this?
They might. It doesn't have those hangups that you have with a lot of Japanese role-playing games, especially when you start the game up. Right. And actually, you're in the action fairly quickly. It's setting you on your first quest to go beat up some monsters. And for people who do play a lot of combo games or games where there's lots of action, this is going to feel, good to them, I think. So it definitely has the potential to break out more than the last. But we got to remember, Final Fantasy 13 really did sell a lot when it was all said and done.
Oh yeah, and
it was a good seller.
And I think those tertiary spin-off games, I think that's where I think some of the concern people are having, because those didn't sell as well. but I think a numbered Final Fantasy is still going to have a huge number of built-in fans.
Yeah, no, and but I think what's going to happen though is, the openness early in the game. According to Mike and a number of other reviewers, the game gets a little more funneled as you get towards the end of the story.
That's okay though. I can almost appreciate that, because it always feels like most open world games go the other way, where you start out at the the skinny end of the funnel, and by the end you have so much stuff going on that it's overwhelming. So I can almost appreciate that like reversing that. Yeah, exactly. Reversing that design element could be something that I find attractive, and it almost makes me want to boot up the game specifically.
But
to see what that's like.
This openness, especially early, really seems like it's geared to the major complaints that people had with the linearity of Final Fantasy 13.
Well, that's good. Because I do
even
know that's
though
something that bothered a lot of people.
Even though if you want to be serious, Final Fantasy X was a very linear game as well.
And that was one of the better sellers.
That one around for it.
Out of many of the Final Fantasy games in the last 20 years, Final Fantasy X was one of the better sellers.
Yeah, and then when it comes to linearity, the Final Fantasy series is very linear when you compare it to many other Western role-playing games.
Without a doubt. All right, but let's move on. Speaking of kind of open worlds, the biggest open world, quotations around that, No Man's Sky. It's getting an update.
Open universe.
Yeah, open universe. It got an update last night, so I was kind of finishing up my entire holiday weekend, trying to put away the Thanksgiving decorations, get out the Christmas decorations, that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of half paying attention to Twitter, and I see people starting to talk about No Man's Sky. I'm like, okay, what now? And it didn't really occur to me that it could be an update. I'm like, that just wasn't in my brain, like, oh, this is eventually going to happen. And it could happen any day now, that where the development team, Hello Games, drops an update. So now the game is at version 1.1. They are adding a number of elements. I guess I should run down some of them real quick. Basically, they're putting more of a focus on creation, where you can build your own base, things like that. They're also doing 3 different modes. The original mode, which is the game that you might know and love / hate. And then there's a survival and a creative. It's very Minecraft-like, where the survival is much more difficult to play as a survival game. Resources are much more limited. You need to build a lot more tools to extract resources and to survive, near your base. And traveling from planet to planet has a lot more risk reward, it seems like. And they're doing that by limiting a lot of the stuff that you have, but also giving you more of those tools. And then the creative is, basically it's just a world where there is nothing that can kill you. You can build, create, do whatever you want, explore, no consequences. There's some other things in there, but I don't know if I necessarily want to talk about the update itself. I'm going to be trying that later. Actually, later today, I'm hoping to stream that because I haven't played it yet. But I do want to, Jason, speak with you and ask, and have you kind of ask me, because I know you haven't played it as much as I have, if it's too late for No Man's Sky. This is a game that's been plagued up to this point. So what are your thoughts up to this point?
My first question is this creative part. Is that something the community wanted? A safe space to create and explore without worrying about being killed?
I do know that people wanted more creative elements. I don't know if creative mode is necessarily the thing that they were asking for. I know people they were collecting all these resources, and you collected those resources to make your ship better and make your suit better so you could collect more resources. That was the gameplay loop of No Man's Sky. And I definitely know... Oh, my cat's mad at me. I definitely know that people wanted creative elements so that they could take those resources and then build build their own base, build their homes, express themselves, instead of just getting better at exploring the universe. Because that loop, once you see through that loop and you see that this is all I'm doing, it's just like adding more slots to my ship. That's not very fun, and you realize that and you can't get it out of your head. If you introduce this mode where you are, building things, that can break up that gameplay repetition and have a major effect. Now, I hope that is just as present in survival mode, and I can enjoy it as much there as opposed to creative mode. Because creative mode for me it's never been a huge attraction. I know people love to build these huge monoliths or these huge monuments and stuff like that in Minecraft, but that's never been my jam, and I don't think it's most people's. So the creative mode specifically, I don't know if that's what people were asking for.
That's interesting because, you know, of all the complaints you hear about No Man's Sky, it didn't seem like that was that to me. It just seemed like it was, this huge world you could explore, this huge universe you could explore, no planet the same, and then people getting upset about how the exploration carried out.
Yeah, but I think...
So let's give everyone a refresher. Why were people upset?
So I think people were upset because basically there was a lot of promises, a lot of talk, and this kind of leads into very specifically whether or not it's too late for No Man's Sky. So for years we've been hearing about No Man's Sky. It's got 18 quadrillion planets. People are never going to be able, and people as in like the human race is never going to be able to explore every planet because we just don't have enough time before our sun burns out. This was the kind of talk we were hearing about No Man's Sky before the game came out. The developers played this up. It was very good marketing, and they released videos that showed these planets that were bustling with life. They looked beautiful. Each creature, which is all procedurally generated, just like all the planets, they looked distinct and alive. And then you cut to the final product, and everything was much more sterile, much more kind of... It just landed with a thud. The planets looked grim and kind of grimy, and the textures weren't very good. The animals didn't look lifelike anymore. They just looked like these put together concoctions of that neighbor Sid from Toy Story. Like he was just like slapping parts together in a really random and nonsensical way. And it was kind of like, okay, this universe that's supposed to make me think like, oh, this endless world of imagination. Instead, it was like I go to another planet and I see another bouncing like Tyrannosaurus Rex with like stubby arms and like a goofy face, and then I get to the next planet and it's like a variation on that. The next planet, a variation on that last one, and it was like that for everything in the game. Like the planets, the life forms, the plants, the buildings. Like you had the same 12 buildings that you would visit, and they were all populated by like the same like 3 alien races, and so like this infinite possibility was actually much more finite and much more limited than I think we were led to believe. And that, like, I'm sure people have seen this by now, and if you haven't, look it up. There's this really great video where people show the 2013 or 2014 E3 trailer for this game compared to the final product. And like in the 2013 trailer, they played like the Jurassic Park theme and like do 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 do, and it's like welcome to Jurassic Park, and it's like this, wow, like it blows your mind, like all these things that you could see and can play with and mess around with. And then the real thing they cut to, and they're like playing that harmonica. They're playing the Jurassic Park thing on the harmonica, and it's like, it looks real chintzy. It looks like really crappy. And that stark contrast, I think a lot of people had a huge problem with because they were expecting one thing. They got something much more disappointing. And, I can understand getting angry about that. Now, that anger was taken too far. Like it was taken to a point where the developers were getting death threats, and every little thing they said, like even offhand comments, were being used against them as evidence that they were lying to consumers. And there's even like in the UK right now, one of their overseeing bodies is investigating the developer for basically, truth in advertisement fraud, like they're actually lying like illegally to consumers. It's being taken that seriously. And that's been the story now for months. The game's came out, I don't know, in June. I think it came out in June or July. And ever since, the story's just been, this game's not what they said it was. And the developer has not said anything since. And now this update's here. And it just feels like most people that were going to give this game a chance already did so, were either disappointed with the game or got what they wanted out of the game, and doesn't really feel like this is the place to go for all that was originally promised. So
have we looked at the Steam numbers since the update? Are people, logging on and playing?
It's a very good point. Let's check right now. It's Steam stats, I think is what it is.
Yeah, because I've definitely seen people talking about it on Twitter. Especially a couple of people who are big fans of the game getting back in and doing their thing. And it seems like they're really enjoying building and creating. The question is it too late for No Man's Sky? Well, this goes back to so many games. A game comes out, people play it for a few weeks, and then move on to the next thing. So the question is there been a dedicated group of people who have continued to be playing this, and are they playing it on a daily basis?
So I looked a few weeks ago, and I think we wrote a story about this.
Mm-hmm.
It was down to like less than 1,000 like per day or something like that. During like a Saturday or Sunday, it got like really low to the point where you could effectively say, no one's playing this game anymore. Because let's give a point of reference. So a top 10 game on Steam, and this is, the Steam PC gaming service. It does a lot of tracking, lets you know who's playing what. There's about 100 to 150,000 people playing any game in the top 10. Or maybe that's the top 5. So yeah, it's like 50,000 for like Football Manager, 50,000 for Rocket League, a game that came out in 2015. But for No Man's Sky, it was down below 10,000, and then below 5,000, and then below 1,000, and this is all on Steam for days of the week, and then even the weekends when the player numbers spike. So no one has really been playing this game, and now the problem is Hello Games has released this update, and they're hoping that people who are lapsed players, because that's going to be the bulk of who they want to get back playing this game, are going to install this and give it another chance. And I'm thinking personally it might be too late for any salvage of this game. It might just be too far gone.
You see, I don't know if it's too far gone. I would hesitate to say that. In today's era of streaming, people could show how attractive these new parts are, how much more enjoyable it makes the game. My question, though, is, we're in the middle of the big fall crunch. All these big games are now out. The last one coming is what? The Last Guardian?
Yeah, that's right. It'll be because Final Fantasy 15 just came out, and then
it'll come out. It comes out this week.
And then and then December for Last Guardian.
Yeah, so, are people going to be going back to this game now? If it's on sale on Steam, it might get some new people, especially with these enhancements that are coming. But, for the old people who are coming back, if they feel burned, I don't see what all this new stuff's going to do. Maybe it'll make them think twice about it and come back. But I do know that if I feel burned on a game, I don't come back to it.
Yeah, I think if anyone that was feeling burned and said so and has moved on to something else, I just don't see them booting the game up again. Okay, so let's give an example. It's currently at 6,000 players on Steam, and it's got a peak today of 7,000.
That's not so bad.
It's not so bad, but games that are ahead of it are Don't Starve Together, Path of Exile, Age of Empires 2, Payday 2, 7 Days to Die. Like most of like the go-to survival games, like H1Z1, all those games are ahead of it still. And
yeah, so those are games that have been fostering communities for a long time with regular updates. The question is, when's the next update and what will it do?
Well, and I think that kind of gets into the major point that I want to make with No Man's Sky is I understand why Hello Games didn't say anything for the last several months. They got into trouble because they made too many promises. They were saying too many words. They were relying on their words, and then when they had to execute, that execution didn't live up to the billing. So now, over the last several months, people are mad at them, and they're like, come out and tell us what you're working on. And they're like, no, instead, we're just going to do the work, and we'll release it when it's ready and let that speak for itself. But now that this is passed, and I know people were mad that they hadn't said anything for months, but I understand why they didn't. But now that this has come out and it's live and people are trying it, No Man's Sky has got to figure out a communication strategy that is two-way with the people it has left or anyone that is willing to hear them out to establish that this game is going to get long-term support. It will have a community that the developers listen to and take ideas from. Because that is how all these other games that we were mentioning have worked. Terraria, H1Z1, 7 Days to Die, Rust, all those games have developed in early access on Steam because they foster those communities. And that's not what No Man's Sky has done up to this point, but I think it has to going forward.
And let's use another example here, too.
Yeah, please.
Take a look at Blizzard. A lot of its communities have been complaining, especially the Hearthstone community, that they weren't getting enough communication from the developers. And then comes Overwatch, and the Overwatch team, if anything, maybe communicates more than any game team out there. And part of that is because, well, it's a live game and you need to communicate when you have a live game going on like that. That's the lesson that we've learned the last couple of years with MMOs. And Overwatch is a shooter, but it's an MMO too.
Yeah. And the way it survives is definitely MMO-like.
Yeah, and Blizzard's learned through this example, okay, well, we need to communicate more for other games. And you're seeing this with Heroes of the Storm and especially with Hearthstone. The developers, from Ben Bro to Yang Wu to Dean Ayala on Twitter, for Hearthstone have been far more communicative in the last couple months than they have been, throughout most of the game's, more than 2-year existence. And here we are, coming on the verge of a new set for Hearthstone coming out on Thursday. And yeah, this is during the big push, but I'm quite sure that a month and a half after this set is out, these guys are still going to be talking and talking and talking and talking, because they've learned from the Overwatch team that you need to engage your community and you need to help them figure things out. And I want to see now if No Man's Sky, once you get this update out, starts taking that attitude or not. Because if they engage with players, what's one way to turn somebody who's angry at you into somebody who could be your ally? By talking to them.
Yeah, you have to
answering
engage
their questions.
Yeah, and those games you're mentioning, huge successes. Overwatch, huge success.
Oh yeah.
Hearthstone, without a doubt, like the most successful digital card game in the market for going on like 2 years now. If you count like its beta period and everything.
Yeah. And Heroes of the Storm is hanging in there.
Yeah,
nobody can beat Dota and League of Legends.
Right,
but it's hanging in
there. Heroes of the Storm is still kind of making its own way, and it's specifically because Blizzard has a built-in audience, but it's speaking to that audience and it's giving them what they want. Now, for No Man's Sky, though, it's not successful in terms of the way people feel about it, the way people kind of consider its place in the market or on their shelves, whether or not they're playing it in a regular rotation. So they're digging themselves out of a hole, and it just seems like, for me, no matter what this update is, almost even if they do everything right with communication, it might still be too late for No Man's Sky, and the only long-term solution is just to focus insanely on this community building, start from scratch, build up slowly, talk to who is still there, and then kind of see if anything happens over the course of the next couple of months, really. But I wouldn't be surprised if in 6 months there was one maybe 2 more updates, and then the team just moves on to something else, because it just feels like such a missed opportunity.
Well, potentially, but here's the thing, if they bring a few people back and engage a new group of people, then they have something that's viable and that can continue, and then they start selling DLC for it.
Yeah, DLC maybe.
And then there you have the way to keep the game alive.
Yeah, they'll have to get to that point before they could sell DLC, because that seems like a really tough proposition anytime soon. But we'll see. You're right. If there is a pathway, it just seems like a very rocky road that might not be worth the investment of their time and their money that they might have to put into it.
No, but I wish them the best. And for the people that love the game, I hope it gets the support that they want.
I do like the game, and I'm excited to try the update. And who knows? I'll write something on it, I'm sure. Okay, Jason, let's try to get through these last couple of topics. I think we could probably hit these ones rather quickly. First, why are big blockbuster games selling so slowly? And I think that's sort of, that question might be a little misleading, but let's kind of jump into the news on this. We've seen several reports and several analysts and even some MPD numbers coming out to say some games aren't selling as quickly as people were expecting, especially at physical retail. Call of Duty, I wrote a story last week. Basically, it's got a softer than expected launch, and it's already being discounted at retail, things along those lines. And it's not just Call of Duty, Battlefield, Titanfall, all the major shooters, and kind of Watch Dogs, all these games that people were coming out and usually 1 or 2 or 3 of these games are going to break out and be the big sales leader. They're not Grand Theft Auto, but there's usually a Call of Duty, and it doesn't seem like that's happening this year, at least when you kind of look at the numbers just on their surface. So, Jason, do you have any kind of gut reaction, thoughts on why games are selling so slowly, or whether or not this is even something that we should be worried about?
I think you should always keep an eye on sales, if you're concerned about the business. But I would caution a few things. Number one, even the MPD doesn't do full tracking of digital sales, and we're hearing people telling us that digital is so far ahead of what they were projecting, 5-10%, even more higher than what they were projecting 5 years ago when it comes to sales. So those lost sales could be made on the console through the stores. You take a look at this, the box sales for PC games, those are dead. Digital's done fantastic on PC. And eventually that's going to happen with consoles too. So until we could get a better gauge of the market when it comes to digital sales, I don't want to be all doom and gloom yet. Second, some of these numbers are coming out of the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom's economy right now is skewed because of Brexit.
Right.
So it's very hard to take, you got to take anything coming out of the United Kingdom with a grain of salt.
Right. What you could do there, you could compare whether Titanfall is selling compared to Battlefield. Like we did that story actually a couple weeks ago where Titanfall isn't selling as well compared to Battlefield in the UK. But what's harder to do is Battlefield 1 selling, comparatively to Battlefield 4 or Battlefield Hardline, because the economy in UK is very different. So compared year to year.
Yeah. And the pound has taken a beating.
Right.
So I want to see more numbers on the United States before we start proclaiming doom and gloom. The second thing too is you noticed, people are saying, oh, but these multiplayer shooter communities are down this year. Well, that could be for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
One, they're playing, there's some really good campaigns with these games. Mm-hmm. Battlefield, Titanfall, and Call of Duty. People are even applauding Call of Duty's campaign. The second is Overwatch.
Right.
So many people are invested in Overwatch and are playing Overwatch.
And we haven't really had that before, where there was an early shooter in the year that has continued to, maintain its community at the rate that Overwatch has into the holidays. So
it's not even maintaining its community; it's building.
Yeah, very well may be.
Yeah, and you take a look at what Blizzard's doing already with esports for Overwatch, and what other groups are doing for esports for Overwatch, and it's no surprise when you see esports players from Call of Duty or from some of the other shooters say, "Hey, let's dump this. Let's go play Overwatch."
Right.
Instead. So I think it's just a lot of things all happening at once, and it's too early to make any proclamations. And even if somebody does say, oh yeah, well, here are the sales, here are low. Okay, but is it just because people don't want these games anymore, or is it because they're playing other things? There's the piece that ran on Gamma Sutra had one good point. Excuse me, not Gamma Sutra, Game Industry Stuff is. I apologize for that. Was talking about how you've got games like Destiny where you've got the M&O model, just like with Overwatch, and people are playing and they're committed to that game, and so they're not playing the shooters.
Puts a lot more money into the digital side than the physical, than what we're used to, because people are spending on microtransactions and DLC on one game longer than they are, more than they are buying like a second, third different game.
Yeah. But it also might mean, well, they're going to buy Battlefield and play the campaign when it's been out for a year and down to $30.
Right, and so a couple things on there. So the discounts, I would point out that according to a couple of analysts, those discounts were pre-planned mostly by retailers and by publishers working with retail. I think a lot of companies wanted to get very aggressive this holiday, and it sounds like for the most part it's not going to hurt like the bottom line, and it's not necessarily a sign of panic where they're like, oh, let's cut these, the price of Call of Duty because it's not selling. It might be, we're including Call of Duty Infinite Warfare and Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered in the same package. Let's sell as much as we can, right up front in those first couple of days at the full price. And then the people that are kind of bummed that they can't get both games who are waiting, let's give them a reason to buy right around the holidays, shopping seasons, kind of kickoff. I think that was kind of planned from the beginning. So it's not necessarily a sign that things are as bad as they might appear.
Now, the big loser here, though, is going to be GameStop. It's not going to be Activision. It's not going to be EA. It's going to be GameStop because people aren't coming in, trading their games to buy the new thing.
Now, it's not necessarily, though, bad thing because GameStop has done some smart stuff to transition. We'll just touch on this real quick. They've done, they bought ThinkGeek, and they have a ton of extra tchotchkes in their store. So when people are saving money buying games, they're putting that money towards plastic toys and plushies and all kinds of other paraphernalia related to their favorite gaming franchises. So and those very often have higher margins than the traditional video game or digital point card. So GameStop might be still making out. Now its most recent financial report said that games might be selling a little bit more slowly, but we're making up for it in other areas. So it kind of backs that up. I'm sure they would be most happy if they were still making as much money from games as they always were.
But we're seeing that transition now, and the way that people used to be used games as a down payment on the next great thing at a GameStop, that era is starting to change.
Yeah, and that's kind of a good sign overall for the gaming industry because it means a lot more people are buying digitally. And I think this is also backed up by the NPD from October. Hardware sales were down, but that's because hardware cost less than it did in 2015, primarily. But software sales, and this is NPD does they track physical hardware at retailers in the United States, and in recent months they finally added digital from Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and Steam, and I think some Nintendo store stuff. But they don't have all the digital numbers. They have some.
Not Battle.net.
They don't have Battle.net, but they also don't have if Microsoft sells a first party game on Xbox Live, they don't have that number either. So it's first party sales on digital, which you think would be the biggest. They don't have that. Now that said, and these are always apple to apple comparisons from the NPD, so they're comparing the digital numbers from last year to this year. They were up 31% for software sales in October, and that's just console. PC was up 172% year over year. So software sales are probably doing just fine if you do bring in digital. Digital, I think a lot of people were always going to assume is throughout this generation was going to be 20% of what the physical sales do. And it seems like it might be 25, 30%, maybe even edging up towards, a full third of all sales. And that might be where most of the difference is coming from.
And it might be getting bigger.
Yeah. And it might I mean, I buy all my games digitally. So I know that, I'm just one person, but I know there's a lot of people that are feeling that way. Now, I think the last point on this topic, and then we can move on, is some analysts have also said that the presidential election was the reason that people weren't buying games in early November. People were too focused on what was happening in the United States, between our presidential election, to focus on, going to the store, buying games, even realizing where they should be spending their money on games. And so there's just this lag in the spending that will get made up for later in November and then in early December. And with all the sales coming, there might be a rush on games where people are buying more units than almost ever before. And I think that kind of tracks with what we were seeing on GamesBeat, because we were seeing no one wanted to read about games in early November. You remember those couple of weeks, right, Jason?
Mm-hmm. And then when the election was over, our traffic went up.
Yeah, exactly. People just weren't into games then. And so I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think kind of going into next month, we're going to see quite a big rebound. And that, kind of might explain away a lot of these slow sales. So I think we're kind of going to get on to our last topic. You want to just talk about this real quick, Jason? Is it too late to get into Hearthstone, or is this a good time thanks to the new set?
So this is going to be, I think, the hardest time to get into Hearthstone this year, because this will be the third set of a 3-set group for this standard rotation. Standard is the format that it's using.
Yeah, you've already lost me.
Earlier sets are out.
Okay.
And then right now you have the Whispers of the Old Gods, and then you have the last night, One Night at Karazhan are the 2 sets that are out now. So people who are coming into Hearthstone now, or who haven't been playing for a while, say you didn't buy Whispers or any of the card packs for Whispers, and you haven't bought the adventure set that was Karazhan, you're going to find yourself playing against people who are using cards from all these in the standard format. So now could be a really rough time to get into it if you haven't been playing. If you've been playing, or say you got bored with Karazhan, and want to dip back, it's a good time to come back. If you're someone who's been playing and who has been a lapsed gamer, but has been staying rather current with the sets, because Gadgetzan has got a bunch of cards that do different things that really hasn't happened in the game before. The way cards buff from the table to your hand, from the way card interactions work, Priest is going to be a lot better. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. The Jade Golem mechanic is going to be insane, where you summon a golem, and each golem you summon is going to be one stronger. So say you play a card, it gives you a 1/1 golem, and then you play another card, and then it gives you a 2/2 golem, and that's going to barrel as we saw play today on the stream that was on Play Hearthstone on Twitch, and you can probably find that archived either on Twitch or on YouTube. Well, so it's gonna be really interesting. I'm excited. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with it yet. I haven't been able to wrap my head around this set, so I think what I'm gonna be doing is just opening up my card backs and then seeing what I cobble together, and just having a lot of experimentation and probably a lot of failure, but I don't mind that. That doesn't bother me. It'll probably bother others though. But it's gonna be a bunker set, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the top players do with it and the kind of decks that come out of it.
Well, let me just ask you real quick then. I think Whispers of the Old God is when I stopped getting new decks. So I haven't been in since then. Do you think, though, that going forward that they're going to drop, like, is 3 expansions going to be like standard for what is in standard, or are they going to drop and just be 2 for a while? So if I were like to start like that, to me that makes it sound like now is the time when I should get back in if I want to get back in, because it might always just be this difficult from now on, where I have to catch up. So if I start buying this most latest expansion, I can start building up my deck for the future. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So when the next set after Gadgetzan drops, you will be losing the Grand Tournament, we'll be losing League of Explorers, we'll be losing Black Rock Mountain. So there'll be a lot of cards leaving the pool, and then there'll be this one first-year standard sets, and then the next set that comes out in 2017, which will be the first set of the second-year standard. And I know this is a little confusing, but now could be a good time. Or you might want to just wait and see. But here's the other thing too: if you're a good player, you can always get these cards in the arena. You play well in the arena, and you learn how to use these cards in the arena, and you get free card packs. Well, I wouldn't say free. You do have to pay 150 gold to get in, or pay $1.50. But that's a great way to earn cards. And if you're somebody who has dropped out of the game and wants to get back in, but you're worried about spending a lot of money on card packs, you can definitely earn packs at a rather good clip if you're a good arena player. You're at least guaranteed 1 pack of cards whenever you play arena. But you do well, you can buy a lot of gold, which you can use to buy packs.
I think that might be how I get back in. I'm not going to probably pre-order 50 packs for $50. It seems like I probably should if I was serious, but I think I might just experiment with arena, start seeing what I do get, and then kind of take it from there. Because I do want to get back in, but it's also like I'm like, oh, it just seems like so much money to get back to a point where I'm happy with any deck that I might have.
It can be a lot of money, but this is the free to play MMO experience,
right?
With some games, not all games. Path of Exile, which is an action RPG I play online, all the microtransactions are cosmetic. So if you buy anything, it's really just because of how you want to express yourself inside the game. You're not buying anything else. Whereas other games, like say the Neverwinter MMO, buying stuff helps you get better mounts or helps you get more crafting material, which helps you get ahead a little quicker than other people who are playing for free. Card games are expensive, and one of the nice things about Hearthstone is you have ways to earn those cards free. And it just depends on how skilled you are and how much you want to try. But considering that I play Hearthstone every day, probably 2-3 hours a day, the money I put into it, I'm definitely getting more out of it.
Right. Yeah, and I think just finding that balance will be the key for me.
But
I'll probably just end up playing Overwatch, though, of course.
Yeah. That said, I'm not every other person, and I don't spend a lot on games because I play a lot of Hearthstone. That's the game I spend money on.
That makes sense. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for our topics today. Jason, is there anything else you want to say about Hearthstone before we move on to the outro and get done with this whole mess?
Other than I think that once the new set comes and once I finally get my head around it, I will be streaming the crazy decks I make, and you can watch me get embarrassed.
All right. Well, my cat is pounding on the door, so you know that's time for us to be done, of course, so he doesn't come in here and turn off my computer again. So yeah, that's going to bring us to the end. I think before we get out of here, Jason, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me in two places. You can find me at GamesBeat. GamesBeat.com will get you there. And you can find me on Twitter at Jason_Wilson, all lowercase, where I tweet about video games. I tweet about sports because I used to be a sports writer and sports editor, and a bunch of other silly stuff.
And I am Jeff Grubb on Twitter, so feel free to follow me there. Sometimes I make YouTube videos, sometimes for GamesBeat, sometimes just for my own entertainment. You can get those on youtube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. And I think that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back next week with another new episode, and I guess I want to say thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, Jason, as well.
I do want to say, though, if you pick up Final Fantasy 15 this week, tell us on Twitter what you're thinking of it. We'd really love to hear from you.
Or write in and let us know your first impressions. Again, the email address, gamespluspodcast@venturebeat.com. All right. Jason, thank you for joining us. That was great.
You're welcome, Jeff.
Cool.
I'll talk to you later. Next time, no cats.
No cats. That's the new outro. That's our new sign off.
No cats.
GamesBeat Decides. No cats.